Welcome back, Season 2 of my The Boys series. If you haven't yet, please take 1 second to subscribe for me and I would greatly appreciate it. Now let's jump right into this. In Syria, Black Noir kills super terrorist Naqib and takes his head with him, but not before stopping to play with a child on his way out. Back in the good old US of A, Vought CEO Stan Edgar is holding a meeting about incorporating the soups into the military with Secretary of Defense Robert Singer. They discuss their new government contract, which has a crazy 34% civilian casualty allowance written in, which apparently is the standard for big cities. At Translucent's funeral, Homelander announces Black Noir's success in killing Naqib, and they mourn the murder of Translucent in front of an empty casket. He makes up a story about a soup terrorist named El Diablo that killed him, and announces his plan to save everybody. The Deep watches on TV from a dive bar in Ohio. He's hammered drunk on lava flows, and the bartender threatens to call TMZ after he becomes enraged when he sees himself cropped out of a photo in the broadcast. Huey's watching the service from his phone. The boys are still on the run for Translucent's murder, and A-Train is in a coma. He's currently living in squalor while Starlight has a penthouse. They're staying with Frenchie's gang member friends, and MM is working as an underground doctor, patching up people coming in with gunshot wounds and other things they can't go to a regular hospital for. They both get disguised and meet on the subway. Huey is a wreck. He asks about her phone, if she was followed, and if they can trace her chip. She tells him to relax, and he gives her the identity of Gecko, a Vought test subject that he thinks can help them out. Now the Deep left the bar, still hammered drunk, but now he's terrorizing kids at a water park and the police are called. He gets arrested and is bailed out by Eagle the Archer, who hands him a fresca and says even heroes need help sometimes. On the news, we see Butcher is now also wanted for the murder of Madeline Stillwell, and he's been missing since it happened. Huey says they need a compound V sample to take to the New York Times, but MM and Frenchie say it's over. Homelander visits Madeline's old office and finds some of her breast milk still in the fridge. He heats it up with his eyes, smells it, and drinks it in the most weirdly sexual way possible. Hashtag mommy issues. Ashley, Stillwell's old publicist that was fired after the Believe Expo, interrupts him. She is taken over for Madeline after Homelander recommended her for the job. She says she has a replacement for Translucent in the gym ready to go, a blind soup named Blind Spot. She says inclusion is huge with millennials and they're working on finding an ethnic female to replace the Deep. Visibly irked by this, he says he wants to meet him. Homelander calls him a hero for having overcome blindness, but then slaps both of his ears and bursts his eardrums before calling him a useless blind guy and a cripple as he writhes in pain on the ground with blood gushing out both sides of his head. He turns to Ashley and tells her that she answers to him and he will make the decisions from now on. Starlight stakes out Gecko at a motel and watches as he meets a man that pays him $400 to cut off his arm with a machete. It's fucking wild. It's a painless process for Gecko. His arm grows back and the guy who chopped it off clearly got off on this shit.
For an extra grand, I'll let you chop off my dick.
And he immediately asks where the closest ATM is. A very badly injured man comes in seeking help from MM while yelling in French. MM says his entire arm is shattered. He needs to go to the hospital. They say no and argue with Frenchie in French before saying something out of soup that just makes Frenchie's face drop. The boys in Kamiko head to the docks and see a boatload of people being smuggled in. The last two men start to argue before one of them lifts up a boat with his telekinetic abilities and throws it at the other man, crushing him. Somebody's smuggling soup terrorists into the country. During a group test study for their new military campaign called Saving America, Vought asks a bunch of middle-aged women what term they find scariest when describing a bad guy. Homelander pushes for supervillain, and the group agrees. The Deep wakes up hungover, apologizes to Eagle, and is given another fresca. They discuss their rock bottoms with a therapist named Carol. They question what got him kicked out of the Seven, and he responds by getting up to leave. They insist they're both only trying to help, with the goal of getting him back into the Seven, and he decides to join the Church of the Collective. Starlight meets Gecko at a diner, and they reminisce over old Bible camp times before she gets to the point and asks him to steal her a sample of Compound V from the Vought labs. He initially says no, and she blackmails him with footage of his little S&M hooker side job from earlier. Suddenly, we're introduced to Stormfront, who is live streaming on Instagram as she approaches the Saving America shoot with Homelander and Queen Maeve. Homelander blows her off, until she says she was chosen to replace Translucent by CEO Mr. Edgar.
Hi, I'm in the Seven.
He's pissed off. She finds it hilarious. The boys go to meet CIA Director Rayner to give her the description of the soup terrorists they saw, and she says Vought is the one smuggling them in. Suddenly her nose starts to bleed and then her head explodes out of nowhere. Huey's covered in blood again. He screams and they get the fuck out of there. On TV, a congresswoman named Victoria Newman speaks out against soup terrorists and Vought, saying they're using fear to control the people. Mr. Edgar watches from his office as Homelander comes in. He's upset he wasn't consulted about Stormfront and and threatens to move on from Vought when his contract is up at the end of the year. Mr. Edgar decides to school him in the history of Frederick Vought, the founder of the company. He got a doctorate in genetics in Munich and was appointed by Hitler to chief physician at a concentration camp, where he had an endless supply of human test subjects on which he tested his earliest versions of Compound V. In 1944, he left and had practical applications of it at this point, and he started to create heroes like Soldier Boy, who killed massive amounts of Germans in the war, and in turn, President Roosevelt pardoned him for his war crimes. He explains that Vought is a pharmaceutical company, and Compound V is their most valuable asset, not him. He knows Homelander gave Compound V to the terrorists, and it could destroy the company because now the FDA knows about it. He makes it very clear he doesn't need to consult Homelander on anything. Homelander, not used to being told no, gets pissed and leaves. He then shows up on Becca's doorstep and says he's here to see his son. The boys discuss what happened, and they think Vought assassinated Raynor. Starlight calls Yui to tell him Gecko is getting her the Compound V, and she's excited to take it to the press. But after seeing Raynor's head explode, he's extremely worried about her getting hurt for being involved, and she can sense he's hiding something from her. All of a sudden, a body comes tumbling down the stairs, followed by Butcher. The guard wouldn't let him in, so he had to knock him out. Frenchie called and told him everything. He tells Yui not to worry, Daddy's home. Daddy's home, baby. Hell yeah, season 2 starting off with a bang. I'm loving it. I think it might be in Yui's contract that he has to get covered in guts a certain number of episodes per season, because it's fucking hilarious that he just ends up getting covered in guts over and over and over again. I bet that's not the last time. Anyways, episode 2 is coming up next. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. Helps my channel a lot. I appreciate each and every one of you for being here. Thanks for watching.